Hi, my name is Rich Larson. I've been a home brewer since 1988. I'm a member of the Brewers of South Suburbia, and a while back I was lucky enough to attend the Siebel Institute for the microbiology and microscopy course. In that class I learned a thing or two on how to handle yeast. Today I'd like to demonstrate for you how to single cell culture a yeast strain from a sample, and also how to preserve your yeast for uses in future batches. So let's get to it. Okay, so like any other aspect of home brewing, sanitation is key. I'm not in a microbiology lab. I'm in the kitchen here. I've got a kitchen countertop. Germs and beer spoilers can be pretty much anywhere. So one of the things I want to do is I want to wipe it down with a sanitation solution. I use hydrogen peroxide that has a 15-second contact time of killing just about anything. I'm going to put a little bit on a paper towel here. I'm going to wipe down the countertop. I've also got a sheet pan here that I put tinfoil on, which gives me a new surface on that, but I'm going to wipe that down as well. So we're just going to wipe this down and make sure we have a pretty good clean surface on it. And wipe this down too. Now I'm feeling pretty confident that I've gotten a lot of the bugs out of the way. So now we're going to start to prep our culture. Okay, so we're going to make a media for the yeast to grow on. Traditionally, the media is agar-agar, which I believe is a seaweed derivative. Agar-agar can be kind of difficult to find. I found that if I just use Knox unflavored gelatin and basically make beer jello jigglers out of them, it works just fine. So what I do is I've got 3/4 of a cup of water here. I'm going to take 2 packages of the Knox gelatin and I'm going to put it into the water. This is called blooming. It basically gives the gelatin a chance to rehydrate. And we're going to let that sit for a little while. Mix it up a little bit here with the whisk so it gets in there. So let that sit a little bit to absorb some water. And in the meantime, I'm going to mix up a small batch of wort, which again, I've got another 3/4 of a cup of water here. And then I have a 1/3 of a cup of dried malt extract, which I'm just going to put into the water. The water is cool. So that's going to go into the water. And I'm going to mix that in a little bit. And we're just going to dissolve that in. I've got some hops here. Hops are traditionally added into beer for a preservative, and it certainly won't hurt in this case to try to create some sort of preservative effect. Because really all we want to grow is yeast. We don't want to grow any bacteria or anything like that. So that's in there, and I'm going to take that over to the stove and heat it up. Okay, so I'm going to turn on the heat here. We are not trying to make a wort. We're not trying to get any kind of hot breaks or cold breaks like we're making the beer here. We just basically want to sanitize the malt extract and water. So we'll let that boil. And when it comes to a boil, we'll be back. Okay, so traditionally, yeast is stored in slants, which is basically a test tube with the media in it on an angle, so that's why I call it a slant. So what I'm going to do is, I've got these test tubes, I'm going to put them in some water here. I'm going to bring them to a boil on the stove as well, just to sanitize them. I don't have an autoclave for what we're doing here. This is home brewing, this is not a microbiology lab, but this should be sufficient enough to get it sanitized for our uses. So I'll throw this on the stove as well. Okay, here I've got the caps for those test tubes. They're plastic, so I don't think they would survive very well in the boiling water, so I'm just going to hit these with a little bit of peroxide. Just get them wet, inside and out. More important inside than anything else. And we'll set those to the side. Now, those are clean now, or sanitized now, but we'll just put them off to the side for now. Okay, we're starting to come to a boil here on the on the wort, and really that's about all we really need to bring it to. I'm going to throw the lid on the pot here. That will calm that down a little bit too. So put the lid on. The steam from the rising boiling wort here will sanitize the lid. I'm going to let that sit. Okay, the gelatin now looks like it's gotten pretty bloomed in there. You can see it's kind of soaked in, getting kind of thicker. So now we need to sanitize this as well. I understand it's not a good idea to boil gelatin just because it breaks it down. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put it in the microwave till it dissolves. All right, so we're just going to put it in the microwave, and I don't know, about a small amount of liquid, so let's do about a minute 45 seconds. Just let it go. Okay, the gelatin has finished on the microwave, and as you can see, it is now liquidy. Incidentally, I sanitized this whisk into the same pot with the test tubes. So now I'm going to take the pre-sanitized wort, and I'm going to add that to the gelatin. And we have our media, very hot media. So we're going to let that sit and cool for a minute. Put some plastic wrap on that to, let's just do this. That should keep the microbes out. Okay, now we're going to take our Petri dishes and we're going to put them on the tray. I got these plastic Petri dishes from American Science and Surplus. The package after shipping cost me $15. They say they're guaranteed sterile, and it's been my experience that that is true. So I'm just going to open that package up and put a couple of them on our tray here. So I'm going to take about 6 of them. Try to keep the lids on when you take them out of the package. Maintain it. Maintain the sterility. So I can do it. Okay. And we'll seal this back up, so I want to use it again next time. It will be sterile again. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to take our media and we are going to pour it into the Petri dishes carefully. And we want to minimize exposure to the air as much as possible. This stuff is pretty hot right now, so we should be pretty safe on keeping the sanitation going. So I will just a little bit. I'm about 1/3 of the way full, 2/3 of it, maybe half. And that one's broken, so we're going to get rid of that one. I made it way more media than I needed here. But better to have too much than not enough. Put that back in there. Let me get another Petri dish. Okay, so here's our other Petri dish, one that's not broken. And we will pour that one in. And just for grins, even though this one's broken, I'm going to put some in it. And we're going to leave this one exposed to the air. Let's see if we can't grow something that's in the air out of it. Just leave that one for now. Right. Now, one thing I like to do is seal these guys, and this is a little bit of a trick. I take some masking tape and I wrap it around the Petri dish gently and carefully, just to seal it. And this helps to keep anything else out. And just basically do that with it. Seal it around. Keeps the lid on it. And I'm going to do that to the rest of them. Okay, so this is the last one. And one thing about gelatin is it does not set up at room temperature like agar-agar does. So I'm going to have to put it in the refrigerator, and I'm going to put it in overnight, and we should have some Jello jigglers. Now, as far as the slants go, we have the pre-boiled test tubes in here, and I'm going to put these in here, and I'm just going to fill those up like the other one. It's still pretty warm. So we're going to take the test tubes out, and the water in here. And we're going to fill these up with our media as well. I only put about maybe about a third of it in this one. And this is going to be a little tricky here. Those fill fast. Out here. We'll try that one like that. Okay, and then as far as the lids go, lids which have been soaking in peroxide, cap them like that. They're hot. Now when we put these in the refrigerator, we're going to want to put them in on an angle as much as possible. Maybe put a little board in there. We want to make a slant out of them. And when these are all solidified, we'll come back and work with the yeast. So we've given the plates approximately a week to 2 weeks in the refrigerator for two reasons. One, to gel the media, and also to make sure we don't pick up some sort of stray infection. I've got that plate that was cracked. I've actually exposed it to the air for 30 to 45 minutes. And it's grown something rather interesting, and I'll show it to you. But I'm not bringing it upstairs yet until after we streak these yeast, because I just don't want to risk infecting the air with the spores from the mold that's on it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to sanitize a little Erlenmeyer flask, a little cute Erlenmeyer flask I picked up at American Science and Surplus again. Just going to boil them a little bit to get them sanitized. Alright, so just going to pre-fill these so I wouldn't get an air bubble in it. So let's see if we can, let's look at an air bubble anyway. That's alright, it'll work. Minimize the air in there. Put them in the water, turn on the fire, and we'll come back after they've boiled for a minute. Okay, so the technique here basically is you have your Petri dish, which is a round circle, and what we want to do is we're going to take our inoculation loop and we're going to streak across the media after we've dipped into the yeast sample in a pattern. And what the pattern is basically is the first sweep, we're going to make a little zigzag like this. And then in the second sweep, we'll make another zigzag going back and forth. And then the third sweep, in theory by now, the yeast cells should be spread out thin enough so when we sweep again, we're not going to get a full streak, but instead we start getting individual cells coming out. And then these individual cells will grow single cell colonies, and that's what we're trying to achieve, and isolate the strain. Alright, so these are our yeast samples. This is from the dregs of a batch of homebrew that was brewed from the captured yeast from a can of Heady Topper. Also, to show you what we can do here, this is a bottle of Bell's Two-Hearted Ale. Most Bell's beers have a yeast sediment in the bottom because they do not filter their beers. Okay, so we've given the flasks a little time to cool down here a little bit. Take a piece of foil and make some tops to these flasks. Cut this in half. Rub it down with a little bit of alcohol and make sure they're sanitized. Place them right on top of the flask. Ready. Put these off to the side now. Now, first thing we're going to do is get our sample out of the bottle of beer. The yeast is in the very bottom, so we're going to carefully pour it into the glass. Waste not, want not. And slowly pour it in until I start to see the yeast sediment start coming up the side of the glass, up the bottle. Here it comes there. Okay, so now I will swirl the remaining in here. Let me wipe down the neck a little bit with some alcohol, make sure I don't get any contamination from anything I don't want. Take my flask and swirl it and pour it carefully into the flask. Now I have my yeast sediment in there. That one should be good to go. Now for the Heady Topper one, what we do is I have in my pot here a pipette, which has been sitting in the boiling water, sanitizing there. Carefully open the Heady Topper yeast sample. And got my pipette. Make sure that's open and loose. Just move quickly. Minimize exposure to air. Off. Don't need a lot of this, so hopefully it'll just fill up a little bit. There. Finger in the end of the pipe here, see? A couple drops. Pretty thick. And get some of this sanitized water in here. Don't need a lot, just a couple drops. Running it down the side of the flask should cool it off enough, so we're not just to dilute this a little bit. Alright, put it back on. And now we're ready to streak our plates. Okay, so what I've got here is my inoculation loop. It's basically just a little loop of wire with a little circle on the end of it. And we'll start with our Heady Topper here. First we're going to sanitize, flame the loop, which will kill anything that might be on it. Definitely more than sanitation, it's going to sterilize it. And then we're going to take our Heady Topper foil here. We're going to go into the liquid. You might hear a little sizzling, that's okay. Swirl around so you get some in there. Now we're going to do that pattern I talked about. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3 this way. Alright, Heady Topper is done. I will do the same thing with the bells. Kill off any Heady Topper yeast here. plate ready. Open up our sample. Get it wet in there and go into our plate. Same pattern, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Now we'll let these plates sit at room temperature for a couple of days, and should be good to go. See if we get anything growing on them. Okay, it's been a week, and we've had some success here. This is the Bell's plate, and if you'll notice, we have some very nice colonies on here. The nice round ones are from a single cell. We're going to actually expand on that so we can streak our slants later. This is the heady topper sample, and as you can see, it apparently is a little bit more prolific, and we have a couple of nice single cell colonies in there as well. So what we're going to do now is I've made up a little bit of just plain wort, just to give the single cell a little something to eat. And I'm going to take my inoculation loop again. I'm going to grab one of these little colonies. I'm going to put it into this wort to get started. I'm going to flame my loop here so we can make sure we're sanitized. Get it really nice. And okay, here's our colony. So we're going to go after one of these colonies here. Now this loop's probably pretty hot, so I'm going to actually stick it in the media first just to cool it down a little bit. And then what we're going to do is just grab one of these little colonies right here, just by scraping it off a little bit. And now we're going to go into our little bottle of wort here. Just go straight into it. Knock him off. He's floating around in there. Cover him up. And we're going to let that grow at room temperature. For the heady topper, I'm going to go right to a slant with it, just to preserve one of these. So again, we're going to flame my loop here. It's nice and hot. Okay, I've got my slant ready to go here. All right, I'm going to go into my culture here. Grab one of my colonies. Nice, nice. Close it back up and onto the slant itself. So here's our slant. Just going to deposit him right on top there. I've got a little carbon there from flaming my loop. You can see it. You can see the white dot in there, and we'll keep that slant. Now that'll grow slowly, and he has plenty of food to work with there. And this is our contaminated plate after 2 weeks of growth. Needless to say, we'll be throwing this one away. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something here on how to handle yeast, and keep brewing.